Hi everyone, my name is Brian Shaw and I graduated from the University of North Texas and the Health Sciences Center in the dual degree program, applied anthropology and public health in 2008. And that dual degree program, very great financial deal by the way. Very happy I did it. So I'm going to give you a bit of background on my experiences since then, and then maybe focus a little bit on my current position as a senior research manager at the Institute for Reproductive Health at Georgetown University, where I've been putting much of the knowledge and the skills that I acquired at UNT into practice. Okay, since then, first, I've continued to work with the small scheduled tribal population in Kerala, India, where I did my UNT thesis work, working with local services and programs to advocate for health coverage for the indigenous populations in Kerala, India, a population that often falls through the cracks in terms of health coverage. This work really propelled me to continue my desire for more education, and I completed my education with a doctorate at the Johns Hopkins University in International Health. I did my doctorate research on an evaluation of the integrated community case management component of the health extension worker program in rural Ethiopia, which is actually a very good model for sub-Saharan Africa for the selection, training, and support of health workers in a very resource-constrained setting. Particularly these health workers for treating the three biggest causes of mortality amongst children: diarrhea, malaria, and pneumonia, which we actually showed that these local women are actually quite effective in treating these diseases and reducing under 5 mortality. Now, this work is actually very interesting because Hopkins is the type of institution that very much likes numbers and is much more comfortable with, say, a randomized control trial versus an ethnography. However, our primary finding was that really, despite having quality services available in rural Ethiopia, less than 10% of these rural women with children less than 5 were actually using these services. So despite quality services, they're just not being used. And it was really my qualitative work that dug to the bottom, and my sort of pushing for more qualitative methods and understanding this from a qualitative or from a sort of more anthropological perspective. That really kind of helped us get to the bottom of some of these reasons that women were not utilizing these services. I just happened to be very lucky of being in the right place at the right time with the right methods for the research question. So I continued my work in positions that usually elevated quantitative surveys until my most recent position as a senior research manager at the Institute for Reproductive Health, which I actually took primarily because it really returned me to my anthropology roots. At the Institute, I'm responsible for developing research agendas and methods and materials, like down to the surveys, the qualitative guides themselves, for some of the specific research studies that we're doing. And at the Institute, we really largely focus on sexual and reproductive health outcomes of young populations in Francophone Africa. And in particular, we focus on understanding social norms and other constructs similar, like female empowerment, through research and through programs that are trying to shift these social norms. And we're trying to understand whether these programs are actually working. And some of these programs, examples, we might be trying to do a program to prevent female genital cutting and mutilation amongst very young adolescent girls in southern Senegal, or trying to promote monocontraceptive use amongst a woman first-time parent in Kinshasa, or engaging men to keep their daughters in school in Niger. There's just so many different locations that we're working in and different types of these health outcomes that we're looking at. But social norms and culture and these sort of things are almost always a huge sort of influence on these behaviors that we're seeing. And one of the things that we're always trying to do, and myself in particular, is trying to understand that context, trying to understand that sort of cultural context that we're going to be doing some of these interventions in, or that we're actually doing some of these interventions in, and trying to use that context in terms of understanding what's going on, as well as some of the solutions that we might be able to put into place. So really just at the Institute, we try to get a deeper understandings of the context and turn those understandings into concrete actions and policies. So I personally handle about, I think, 10 different studies primarily in Francophone Africa. And in a typical work week, I might start by designing participatory research tools, such as vignettes or other rural participatory appraisal methods. Many of the things that you may have learned actually in your anthropology classes, or going to be learning in your medical anthropology class, if I remember correctly. We're using these really to explore social norms related to sexual and reproductive health of very young adolescent girls in southern Senegal. So I mentioned that research a little bit earlier. But then I might jump in to guide a team of qualitative coders whose transcripts we just received from our local research partner in Burundi, focusing on sexual behaviors in drinking in young men. So participatory methods, qualitative methods, designing all sort of aspects of this. And then later in the week, I might do some quantitative analysis with some structural equation modeling and article writing for our research and intervention, for example, among faith communities in Kinshasa to reduce intimate partner and gender-based violence. And then finally, not during COVID times, but I might hop on a flight to Nigeria and work to train and supervise a local research team that I'm working with on a cluster randomized trial in northern Nigeria, looking at the impact of interfaith dialogue activities that we're supporting. And the idea is really to reduce, communal and often religious-based violence that has been unfortunately taking place in this region. So basically, any piece of research or any research question that anybody wants answered within our institute or many of our partners or many of the ministries of health that we work with across the globe, really I just kind of have a lot of conversations with them, figure out the best sort of methods and the best sort of mechanism to be able to collect this data and present this data and actually make this data useful and impactful. So finally, we don't really want all this research gathering dust, so I often advocate for the important work and insights that we're generating here at the Institute. I take part in several working groups and consortiums of academics, of politicians, of ministries of health and practitioners, really trying to figure out some of these things. For example, how do we measure norms? About as difficult a thing as measuring culture. Other things, what are the ethical implications of our work? What are the evidence-based practices that we have for shifting norms? How do we put that into a place to where the contexts might be wildly different? So we have a lot of these sort of small groups that have these really sort of global questions within research around social norms that we're trying to answer and trying to come together as a larger field to put forth, some really sort of quality research agendas, and just to make sure that we're always kind of at the forefront of the field and our understandings of social norms. I actually lead one of these groups, the Learning Collaborative to Advance Normative Change. And we do a number of trainings, publications, white papers to really get the word out about our findings. So I spend a pretty significant proportion of my time as well in these networks, pushing our own sort of little idiosyncratic interest of social norms that we have effectively shown is very influential, say, whether a woman uses modern contraception to delay her pregnancy. So in COVID times, this is actually more what I find myself doing compared to pre-COVID. As you can imagine, the travel, one of my favorite things about this job is actually virtually nil right now. But apart from the travel, I really enjoy the challenge of designing creative methods and lines of inquiry, fashioning research questions, fashioning a methodology, putting together a team, and then seeing that really through the data collection, the analysis, and the report writing and the manuscript writing. I really like to be able to dream up these sort of good quality research questions, and then seeing kind of what answers that we get for that. Now, I do rarely get the unhindered opportunity to do this. There are many challenges. I guess foremost amongst those are the vagaries and the dictates of funding. For example, we take funds from USAID, and the current administration was not really particularly interested in funding programs to provide sexual and reproductive health programs for girls in rural Africa. So politics and funding create severe challenges for my work, and it is particularly challenging during COVID. For example, we had to effectively put all of our programs on pause. So I constantly worry that really all the progress that we were achieving can so very easily be wiped away. So that depressing bit aside, and trying to bring this back to a little bit of a happier note, I do feel that I would likely be unable to really perform this position without my anthropological perspectives and training. As I mentioned, my institute is very happy to incorporate methods from the Anthropology toolkit. Hopefully you guys all find institutions such as these if this is what you want to do with your futures. And it is much easier really to get them to understand and respond to, reports on an ethnography in Tanzania, for example, as opposed to a randomized control trial in Congo. Just much easier for them to understand and respond to, and to think about the implications for some of our programs. Not to say that anthropologists can't do quantitative work, of course. And even with quantitative work, I find that my anthropological perspective really still helps me translate these numbers into understandings and actions that account for areas that are typically of concern within our discipline. So yeah, I love the work that I do, and I enjoy finding opportunities to take what I've learned at UNT and at Hopkins to contribute in some small way to our institute's mission. A mission that is almost intrinsically requires the discipline of anthropology to successfully execute. And on that note, I'll bid you adieu. One piece of advice, learn as many languages as you possibly can if you're going to be working in the international sphere. And best of luck in finding your future way in anthropology, and basically any field, nearly every field which that touches upon. So thank you, Doug, and happy to present to you today. I think if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Doug, just let me know, and good luck. You guys are going to learn a lot of good things this year.